All right. This is the last session of the day. I am the only thing between you and Universal Studios. I really appreciate it that you're here all the way to the end. I know some people are flying tomorrow, so this may be your last Ignite session. I hope that we can kind of close the experience with, with a golden ribbon. I hope to make it worth your while. Thank you for being here with us. My name is Luis Cabrera. I am a program manager in the Azure Search organization. I am responsible for a new capability of Azure Search that we call cognitive search. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So before we get started, I want to introduce you to a person that has influenced probably every day of your life for at least the last, the last 20 years or so. This individual has modified the way that you interact with computers, even with the actual hardware that you use every day. Meet Dr. Vannevar Bush. Dr. Vannevar Bush he actually wrote an essay in the 1940s. And this essay was called As We May Think. And in this essay, he envisioned a machine that will store all your communications, that will remember all your books. This was a machine that you could query for information. You could retrieve information very quickly. I love this actual picture because you can see that he probably could have patented the GoPro ahead of time. So it's actually pretty exciting, right? Like this man came up with all these ideas, and this is actually what the Memex machine looked like. Notice, for instance, that little joystick on the right. Doug Engelbart later on was inspired by the kind of pointing device here to invent the mouse later on. At the very top of the screen, you can see that it says the Memex system, desktop hypermedia. Anyone use hyperlinks today? Right? That's where the hyper comes from. So, and the part that is interesting, you see the open drawer on the very left. That was the storage unit. That's where all the books and memories and all the communications you had will go. So super, super interesting that this man, at the time he had microfilm. That's all he could envision for storage. Probably not going to fit in one drawer. But that's what he had to play with, and he envisioned this machine. Now, he probably didn't consider how much data we humans produce. We produce about 2.5 quintillion bytes per day. That's a ton of data. That's an amazing amount of data, and this is kind of a blessing and a curse. A blessing because it's one of the three components that we need for intelligent systems. Actually, let me go back one or two slides. In the title of Vannevar Bush, it says, a top US scientist foresees a machine or a possible future world in which man-made machines will start to think. Thinking machine, right? So data is one of the components to have thinking machines, right? We need data. We need a ton of compute. Thanks to the cloud, this is not a big problem. And we need the proper artificial intelligence and machine learning algorithms. But there are some challenges. It turns out that the world is a little bit messy. Not all the data is kind of nicely structured. This actually is an image that came from a real customer that shall not be named for obvious reasons. And they said, look, this is my world. This is where my data lives. It's a mess, right? Like, yes, you have a ton of data there, but it's pretty useless. Now, I hope that none of you are in this position. But I will also bet that a great majority of you have the digital equivalent of this. In other words, the expected number or the number that is agreed upon in the industry is that 80% of business relevant data is stored in some kind of unstructured format, usually text. So that's crazy, right? Like we need to be able to, in order to kind of have this vision where you can retrieve any information that you want, we need to be able to sort out where the information is, rather, inside all of this data. So this is the problem or the mission of my team at Microsoft. We want you to be able to find information that you care about, no matter what it is. It's a very lofty goal. It may take us a lifetime to really solve this problem, but it's a worthwhile problem to solve. So a few years ago, we released Azure Search. Azure Search is a platform as a service solution. So let me contrast it with SharePoint so that you guys don't get confused. Sometimes people think of a software as a service solution. No, we're focused on the kind of platform components, the components that a developer will use to build whatever solution they want. So this software as a service solution is a managed search solution. Imagine that you were, let's say, building a real estate website, and your customers need to be able to find a house that meets a particular criteria. Maybe I need 3 bedrooms because I have a child or 2. I need this many square footage. Oh, and by the way, I'm going to do a search that says, I don't know, pool or whatever you want in your house, or like, I don't know, marble countertop, or whatever queries you come up with. Azure Search is a fine product to use to help you find the information in your data. And it has all the bells and whistles that you have come to expect from an enterprise-level search platform component. What customers told us, however, is, look, this is great. And actually, search the product has been growing quite a bit. But one thing that we heard from our customers is, my data is also unstructured. I need to be able to find information in my documents. And so we said, OK, perfect. Let's go and figure out how to kind of crack open these documents and extract information from them. But it's a little bit more challenging than you will imagine. Let's consider this example. This is some kind of document that, let's say, your company received because someone in Germany scanned it and sent it to you. And what did you get? You get this document. It looks very nice for us humans, but for a machine, it's just a bunch of pixels. It turns out that there is no text in this TIFF file. So, OK, the good news is we have machine learning capabilities that can help us kind of extract the printed text. So there are some things that we can do with these files. Let's consider this other example. You may know who this is. This is Scott Guthrie. Once again, as an image for us humans, no big deal. But if I have this image in, let's say, a bunch of documents, let's say I have 10,000 documents, and Scott Guthrie tells me, Luis, I remembered I had a picture of me that I gave you, and you put it in one of your files, and I think I was wearing a blue shirt. I really wanted to change to red. So, then by using machine learning techniques, we can find, OK, that's Scott Guthrie, and maybe he's using a blue shirt, and then I can actually find the picture and then hopefully modify it to meet his branding standards nowadays. We at Microsoft have been working on a lot of these machine learning capabilities. We have been creating machine learning tools like the Azure Machine Learning Studio that allowed you to create essentially any model. But a lot of our customers have told us, look, I am not a data scientist. And those are hard to find nowadays. They're expensive. What can you do for me? So we created a suite of services that we call cognitive services. These are very easy to use. You don't have to be a data scientist to consume it. And they span a variety of capabilities, right? Speech to text, text to speech. We have a language understanding service that can help you create bots, for instance. We have the ability to understand what's in an image, create captions for them, find people in an image, even predict how old you look. Some people are happy and some people are not with that. And then also text analytics, kind of natural language processing types of algorithms. Key phrase extraction, sentiment analysis, a bunch of very, very interesting scenarios. So once again, the 2 things that you need to remember, besides that these are very useful and you should go to the website at some point, is that these are built for developers. You don't need to be a data scientist. scientists, and usually they are kind of request-response services, right? You send some input, you get the output. That's pretty much the end of it. In some cases, you can kind of train the models, but even in those cases, you're just providing examples. You again, don't need to be a data scientist. I think the best way to understand this is by actually doing a demo. So let me log in into my demo machine right here. And I am here in the Azure portal. And I have, earlier today, created a text analytics subscription. Once again, as a developer, you will go and you can see, let me just kind of zoom in this. You can see a lot of information, what's the API like, what is the documentation, and so forth. And of course, it gives you the keys that you need in order to call the system. I'm just going to copy one of these keys. And I'll kind of show you what's going on under the hood, how to call this, and then we'll have a nicer experience. So here I can see, for instance, the capabilities for that one cognitive services. It says it can detect language, it can identify entities, it can identify key phrases, and it can kind of detect the sentiment of an expression. So those are all very interesting. And I am going to open the API testing console. I am going to show you something that nobody has seen, because we just released it yesterday. Actually, we just created it yesterday, and it's still kind of hidden because we didn't want to deploy during Ignite. But soon after Ignite, you'll be able to do this yourself. So, which is a new kind of entity linking model that we created as part of text analytics. And what this tool is allowing me to do very nicely is to actually compose a post request that I'm going to send to the service, and it's going to return to me the entities that it finds in that. But let's actually put some more interesting code. Instead of me typing, I'm just going to copy this code, this text right here. And then I'll show you what so it says, the most committed learners came to learn about cognitive search and other Microsoft technologies at the Ignite conference. They are ready to learn, and when we finish, we will go party at Universal Studios to celebrate everything we learned today. So let's say I have a piece of text like that, and I want to find what entities it identifies in there. So you can see it actually generated a very nice query for me. Let's say that there is another record there, just because it's fun to have more than one record. I'm going to send this request to the system, and I can see the actual response. And this is actually pretty cool. So let me show you. Oh, sorry. Oh. OK. Sumit doesn't want to collaborate with me. Let's do it the other way. So in this case, it found a few entities. You can see here that it found a match of text at offset 82 that says Microsoft. And it said, OK, so this refers to a company called Microsoft. OK, so that's kind of nice. It found a company, but it also found what it means. And it says, OK, by the way, I know the Wikipedia ID for that company. And there is a Bing ID, just in case you want to use Bing Entity Search to find more about it. So that's pretty cool. Somewhere in offset 202, it found the text Universal Studios. And it said, actually, that particular text belongs to a company called Universal Pictures. I didn't know that. That's actually pretty cool. And this is, once again, the Wikipedia ID and Bing ID. So it's able to kind of find, essentially using the knowledge of the world that Bing has, which are the actual entities. And sometimes if I refer to them in more than one place, let's say I say Microsoft Corporation, and somewhere else it says Microsoft, they will be kind of in the same bucket. And they will say, no, it's the same company. It's this Microsoft company. And just for fun, one new capability that we have there that we introduced recently is the ability to find dates and numbers and things like that. So it says, today, I noticed that somewhere in there it said today. And by the way, I believe that's a correspondence to a daytime. So then I could say, OK, perfect. So someone is talking about today, and then that must refer to a date reference. In the other text that I didn't enter, there is a reference to Bill Gates III, which is Bill Gates, and Paul Allen, which is just Paul Allen. So kind of fun. A more elegant version of that. I'm going to submit the text. I can find, let's say, the sentiment and key phrases. Without reading this text, I can just look at the blue section, at the blue text here, and it talks about something about committed learners, Microsoft technology, Universal Studios party, right? So I can kind of get a gist of what this is about. If this was a very big document, this will get very interesting, because now I could use things such as the frequency of terms and how they relate to each other to find the top key phrases. And we'll discuss that a little bit more in a few minutes. I can see that this is very positive because you guys are committed, of course. And then I can find, of course, entities such as Microsoft and Universal Studios. And sending that to Bing Entity Search, I can find additional information, including the logos for these companies or organizations, as well as what they really are. So what just happened here? Why am I going through all this spiel about cognitive services? Because we converted just a bunch of characters into structure. Now I know there are two organizations or entities mentioned there. I know specifically which entities those are. I also know what are the key topics. And in this case, I'm not showing them in order, right? But it will be saying something about committed learners or party, Universal Studio. So I can see what this is about. What if we could apply a similar pattern to our documents? So that's what Azure Search is. In essence, we want to be able to ingest, enrich, and then explore the information that we care about. I see a few of you taking a picture of this. Wait until the next slide. It's better. So this is the easy version. The more interesting one is here. And we'll go through this in a little bit more detail. So essentially, you have your data in a variety of kind of data storage solutions. It could be in blob storage, Azure SQL. It could be in Cosmos DB. You name it, whatever you have it in Azure somewhere, right? Then we need to be able to, once again, crack open these documents. Let's consider a PDF. Maybe it's kind of some statement of work or a contract or something like that someone sent me. I need to be able to extract the images out of that, the text, the metadata, and so forth, and then apply a set of machine learning algorithms, just like we did with that little piece of text. And then that will give us the structure that we care about, and then we can use search as a way to explore this information. So let's go a little bit deeper on this one. When we crack documents open, these are the data sources that we support. I should point out that Azure Files, the last one there, is in private preview. So if you're interested in that, just contact us. We're happy for you to join the private preview of Azure Files as a data source. And we support a variety of formats. I just put a handful of them, but this should be familiar with you. The types of documents that you will encounter in your office, in the enterprise, and so forth. So we take these documents, we extract the text, we extract the images, we extract metadata, because sometimes there is metadata. Let's say in blob storage, you can add metadata to some of these files. And then they are ready to be enriched. For those of you familiar with Azure Search, those of you that have played with Azure Search in the past, you may be familiar with the concept of an indexer, an index data source. So essentially, we introduced a new concept. It's the skill set. So an indexer think of it as an object that holds a pointer to a data source, where to go get the data. It knows how to track changes in that data source. So like, let's say I add one more file to blob storage, let's say, then it knows, OK, I know which one was the last one that I indexed, so I'm going to go grab just the delta, right, as an example. And then we have the actual index, which is what you query, but there is this thing in the middle, the new component that we call the skill set, which is where you define essentially a pipeline of enrichment, a pipeline of steps that allow you to get structure out of your unstructured data. So we piggybacked on a lot of the investment that we did in cognitive services, and we created what we call cognitive skills. So cognitive skills, actually this is a list of built-in skills. You can just use them out of the box. You can connect them out of the box without any problem. So we massage the API in such a way that they will kind of talk to each other and that you could create enrichment pipelines. And like it's great. You can do, let's say we do handwriting recognition, printed text recognition. But I am pretty sure that one of you will say, look, I need this very specific problem. I need to find symptoms in health records or whatever. No problem. I mean, essentially, we're not going to give you that out of the box, but you have the tools using Azure Machine Learning, Databricks. You pick whatever tool you want to create your custom model in. And we have a very clear interface so that we can connect to your custom skill. And then it can become part of this enrichment pipeline. And then we can even further enrich the output of that skill. So let's discuss this skill set a little bit more. So we imagine kind of a very, very simple skill set that has 4 steps. Let's say I take the text that I extracted as part of this document cracking. We also kind of extracted the images for you. And then, so now I have some text that I have some images that I can call or OCR or printed text recognition skill. And then I will merge them both together, right? Because I just want the text. I don't care if it came from images or from the actual text. Consider a Word document that may have text and then some images inside of it, some diagrams perhaps. And now that I have all of the text together, I may want to find organizations and, let's say, locations. No problem. So this is what it would look like. And let's see how we can create something like this in about 10 minutes or so. For the next 10 minutes, I want you to really pay attention because I'm going to give you homework. I really would like you to do, maybe not tonight because we're all going to go to Universal Studios, but try to really pay attention because tomorrow morning, as soon as you wake up, you're going to jump out of bed and you're going to say, OK, I'm going to create my first enrichment pipeline. And so it should be super, super easy. And you can do it and impress your boss when you get back home. So let me change to my demo tool. So, all right. So just so that I didn't waste your time, I created a search, an Azure Search subscription ahead of time. I want to emphasize one thing because sometimes when we were in the booth, it wasn't clear. People said like, oh, is cognitive search a new product? And it's not. Cognitive search is just a capability of our existing product, which is Azure Search. So we don't have like 2 search tools that compete. We just made Azure Search better. So, OK, so you create your Azure Search subscription. And then in the portal, if you just want to create a very simple data flow, you can click Import Data. And it will walk you through each of these steps, right? First, you need to connect a data source. And let's say I want to connect to Blob Storage, where I put a bunch of files. Actually, this is where all my files are. And then all I will need to connect to that is pass, essentially name it my data source. And then I will have to pass the folder where I want it. And then I can pass the connection string so that I have the rights to connect to it. I'm not going to do that right now because it's pretty obvious. Because I already created a data source. So I'm just going to go to an existing data source. And I called it my files, which points to that set of files that I showed you in the Microsoft Azure Storage Explorer. Just a bunch of files of different formats that I just took from my personal files. OK, so I'll do that. I'll say select. And it's going to take between 30 seconds to a minute. But what Azure Search is doing right now is going to kind of take a look at a sample of these files, understand what kind of metadata is in those files, so that it can better kind of prototype an index for me that will be good for me to use. And actually, it was much faster than the 30 seconds. That's good. And I am going to create a skill set. I'm going to call it a final skill set because I practiced this so many times that I'm sure I didn't use that name. OK, so I'm going to call it the final skill set. And I am going to tell it to, just by clicking this little checkbox, a ton of stuff is happening. I'm going to take the images, OCR them, like each image in the document is going to go through an OCR process. I'm going to take the text from that, the text that I extracted also from the original file, because sometimes they have text, and then I'm going to merge it. And by doing that, I am going to create the merged content field. That's fine. And then it tells me, what do you want to do on top of that? And I'm just going to do everything. I'm going to extract people's names, organizations, locations, detect the language, generate captions for images, find celebrities. So I'm going to do a ton of stuff, and I'm going to click OK. And at this point, now the skill set has been defined. Essentially, it's kind of a default set of skill set based on what you checked. And it tells me, OK, wonderful. I have created an index for you. And I'm going to call it the final Azure Blob index. And you can see, for instance, that there is a field here called people, which is a collection of strings. And for each of the fields that I have now in the search index that will be created, I can define what are the attributes of these fields. Are the fields retrievable, searchable? It's not face table, it's facetable. So the ability to be faceted. So I can tell it whether I want those to be facets or not. So let's say that I want my organizations or my people and organizations to be both facetable and that I can filter on them. So I'll just kind of do that. Sure, why not? Key phrases as well. And then I can select what I want to do. Maybe I want to also add, let's say, the metadata storage name and make it both retrievable and searchable. So I have the name of the file in an index, in a field. And I'm just going to use the metadata storage path as the key for my index. So I click OK here. Now it knows the definition of my index. And now it says, OK, let's create the indexer. The indexer is the guide that glues everything together. So I'll call it my final indexer, final indexer. And it can tell me, I can tell it how often to kind of go and check if there are new files. I could do it only once, and then it will just index whatever is in that storage. Or I could say, do it every hour or daily. Like maybe I just get a couple of files a day. In this case, I'll just do it once. And then some advanced options, I can tell it, for instance, if I wanted to stop if something fails, like let's say some image is, it says that it's a JPEG, but inside of it there is no JPEG or something like that. I could set that to a maximum of failures before it stops, so that I say, like, don't continue if you see so many failures. Or if I set -1 here, it means infinity. Just keep going, right? And also, this is a new field that we introduced, content and metadata versus storage metadata only. For instance, if you say content and metadata, it will actually go and extract the images, the text, and then I'll say OK. And I'll say OK. And this will start kind of cranking the machinery. We're going to kind of start taking all your files, kind of sending them to different kind of processes so that we extract the structure out of them. That's going to take a while, more than we have right now to wait. So I'm just going to cheat. And I already, ahead of time, created, just this morning, a similar index. And I called it the Azure Blob index instead of the final one. And just so that you can see, actually, I can search on it. And this is kind of the ugly version. I'm showing you what a developer will see, and then we'll make something look a little bit nicer so that you will see what a customer will see, right? So I'm going to search, let's say, for, let's say, bots. And you can see that there is some presentation that I did in Spanish in Mexico a couple of months ago. And it talks about bots, for instance, right? So that's great. But if we go down here, you can see that I can see some key phrases. I can see, oops, sorry. You kind of go down. I can see some people mentioned there, Luis Cabrera, Jim. I don't know why I used Jim's name or whatever, Mike, but it found those names in there. John F. Kennedy, I know why I used that one. So, but the cool thing is it did it all by itself. I didn't have to provide it a list of names or anything. It took care of it all by itself. Now, I wrote a little app to make it easier to see these files. Azure Search will give you the kind of the tools that you can query, and then you will retrieve all that JSON. How you want to visualize it, whether it's a mobile application, web app, or whatever, it's kind of your problem. We're just one Lego piece as part of a bigger solution that you will write. So I'm going to write a little website, essentially, or I have written a little website and give it my credentials in order to be able to kind of visualize the results a little bit nicer. So let's see. This should take just a couple of seconds to run. And then you can see that it created this very simple website. And let's do the same query just for fun. I'll say bots. And apparently there are two files where I mentioned bots. And one of them is kind of the presentation in Spanish that we were talking about, right? So notice that it found this despite the fact that originally this was a PowerPoint deck, right? So that's kind of pretty cool. And I was talking about the beginnings of the technology and so forth right there. So what if we search for Scott Guthrie? Remember the problem that we had? So if I search for Guthrie, you can see that I can see some images. But I can also find that there is my demo cheat sheet that I created just to help me kind of navigate the demos today. And this is a Word file. And you can see that indeed Scott Guthrie is smiling at us right there as he wears a blue shirt. So is that pretty cool or what? Yes? Okay, yeah, all right, awesome. So this is something you can do tomorrow when you wake up, first thing in the morning, bam, cognitive search experts. So, all right, so let's move on back to the deck. Now, the skill set that we created there was kind of, it was kind of fixed. I mean, you can kind of check the boxes that you want, but that may not fit exactly what everyone needs, right? Sometimes maybe you want to add some of your custom skills at the very end, or maybe the structure of the skill set actually looks different. For instance, I may want to, let's say, detect the language of the document before identifying key phrases in order to, to make the key phrase extractor algorithm better. So let's talk a little bit about these kind of custom skills. In this case, imagine that you want to create a cryptonym extractor or something like that is just not part of the cognitive skills. So you want to create your own custom skill. Once again, the system is kind of agnostic how you build it. Essentially, you create an endpoint. We have a well-defined interface. It just has to be secure. And then as long as you meet kind of a very easy input-output interface where you can provide essentially a batch of property bags as inputs, and it will return you a batch of property bags as outputs, then we know how to deal with that. We know how to pass the information to you. We know how to receive it. And we know how to kind of chain it to the rest of the pipeline. In order to know how to chain it to the rest of the pipeline, you need to define the connections, and we'll talk more about that in a second. I did put the little Azure functions logo here because I found that one of the easiest way to create these custom skills is just using Azure functions, and I really enjoyed it. There is a really good documentation, for instance, in the cognitive search documentation on how to create, let's say, a translator function, and it walks you step by step on how to do it. So that if you are excited after doing your first homework tomorrow, then that could be another one. That will be fun. So another demo. So let's see. Who has seen the JFK demo? We have kind of been using that one a little bit. OK, so about 20% of you. So I'm going to spend a little bit time on that one. We figured we have to have some kind of interesting thing to do to show you the power of cognitive search. So we took the files from the John F. Kennedy assassination. John F. Kennedy was assassinated in the 1960s as he was going on a motorcade in Dallas. And we wanted to figure out what would be like if we actually search all these files. What is cool about this is, the scenario is kind of fun and to discuss it. But the website, or rather, if you go to aka.ms/jfk files, I have a link with resources at the end. You don't have to take pictures. Then it will take you to this page, and you can either launch the application, which we will do in a second, or you can also see the GitHub if you wanted to code something similar to it. So that would be fun if you want to learn. So let's launch it. And then, all right, so cool animations and stuff. Let's see. OK, there we go. Now, let's say that we want to start with something like, let's search for Kennedy. And then we will see all the results where John F. Kennedy gets mentioned. There are some files where it's in printed text, some of them where you can see this in kind of handwriting, Kennedy right there, or essentially Kennedy gets mentioned in a bunch of different files. So that's kind of fun. We were able to find all these documents, despite the fact that in many of them there is no actual text that has the characters KENNNEDY. The other thing that is kind of fun here, if you look at the left of the screen, is that we have automatically generated tags. All these entities that we identified. You can see, for instance, that there are a bunch of files that mention the Central Intelligence Agency, the CIA, a bunch of other ones that mention the FBI. We didn't specify a list of organizations or locations. Essentially, we have machine learning models that have learned to identify what names of organizations and locations look like, just like we humans do, right? Like we don't have a list of all organizations in our head. And so that's kind of fun. I could kind of, let's say, filter based on the FBI ones. I could use that as a facet and then see that. All right, let's search for the bad guy. Or at least the government says that the guy that killed John F. Kennedy is Oswald. And once again, we can see printed text, handwritten text. But I really like this example. And some of you that came at the booth, I showed that to you because I really, really enjoy it. There is a piece of text here at the top that says Lee Harvey Oswald posing for the camera. And then a set of tags, wall, person, text, sign, posing. Those were all automatically generated by our image analysis skill. And by the way, of course, we have the New Orleans LA 112723, which is part of the characters at the bottom of his sign right there. So I can find, I could just have entered 112723 and I will have found this image, despite the fact that, that there is no actual text in there. All right, let's actually make this a little bit more real. In some cases, we need to use something like this in the enterprise. So Walter Kluger was one of the customers that was part of our private preview. And they told us, look, we need to write a tool that allows us to search Security and Exchange Commission files that makes attorneys super efficient. Apparently, attorneys are very expensive, so don't distract them. Yeah, so they said, look, we want to just be able to find the SEC files, kind of pop up to the top any information related to it, and allow them to find the document that they care about as quickly as possible. So here, I search for Microsoft. If I click on the first entry here, I can see that that was kind of some SEC letter to Microsoft. By the way, I can see that right here on the right. That's sent to Microsoft Corporation without actually having to read the letter. And the green tags right here, let me kind of zoom in that for a second. Those are the key phrases. If I can just look at the top three key phrases here, it says, this document has to do with Sudan, Syria, and Microsoft. What's going on with this company, with these entities? So I can click on, let's say, Syria, and then I can see that the SEC is kind of complaining because Microsoft provided certain software to Sudan and Syria, and because of that, Microsoft has to fill some extra forms of whatever just to make sure that that the help that they are doing to these countries is the right level of help, right? Or the right type of help. So, okay, perfect, right? So without having to read the document, very quickly we got to the information that we cared about. I hope the attorneys are happy. And let's take another example that I really, really like. Oh, sorry, before we move on, I want to show you that it was able to find Microsoft in different types of files, right? Some of them are slides, some of them are pictures. In some of them, the Microsoft thing is in a logo of sorts, right? In some of them, it's in actual text. So that's kind of fun. The other thing is, and you can see the facets that it finds on the left as well. Because we have the power of Azure Search at the very front of this, we can do actually pretty cool queries. One of the scenarios that they mentioned is, look, we would love to be able to find documents where there are discussions of risk and fraud. And I was like, risk and fraud? And then they explained a little bit further. They said, look, if you are a lawyer and your job is to write the statement that there is potentially some fraud in your company, that there is a risk of fraud, you have to be very careful with the language. Because if you are too harsh on your own company, you could take the stock price down. If you don't, you could get sued because you didn't disclose the truth. So lawyers are always in this kind of trying to navigate this fine line. So I can do something pretty cool here, like we call it a proximity search. And so I am saying, okay, fine, let's find any documents where fraud and risk are mentioned within 10 words of each other. So that's pretty cool because if I did just the two terms by themselves, it could be that it talks about fraud in the first page and risk in the 10th page. Or if I put them just in quotes, then they have to be together. I may just get one or two documents. But if I do this, I will get any documents where those two terms are used 10 words from each other. So a lot of cool stuff from search itself, besides the enrichments that happen beforehand. So I do that, and then you can see all kinds of fun files where that happens. I can click on one of them, and just for fun, I'll see the transcript. And you can see that, indeed, fraud and risk are kind of close to each other. And then, I can, as an attorney, I can find what they did, or if that matches the pattern that I want to follow, did they get sued or not, and then decide if I want to follow that pattern or not. Okay. So I want to drive the point across that cognitive search is something that you can apply to your business. It can be very helpful. You can use machine learning to make you more efficient. As a matter of fact, the name of our team is the Applied AI Organization because of that. We want you to apply it. All right, let's go back to the PowerPoint. So I think by now okay, yes, there is this enrichment pipeline. I can kind of connect things together. I can do it in the portal. But how do I define this programmatically if I want to create my own pipeline? So let's imagine that we start with a mini tree, mini structure of information that you will get as part of the kind of document cracking step. You will get the content of the file. This is the text that we found in there. You will get a list of normalized images. So your little tree looks like that. So then we will define a skill set, and you can do that in JSON. I'm showing here the REST API, but of course we have C# APIs and so forth that you can consume. And so it says, okay, perfect. So let's set the array of skills. And for each skill, I need to define the actual skill that I am going to call. In this case, I'm going to call the language detection skill. You can define the input. In this case, the actual text that I found in the document. And then the output will be, in this case, I have two outputs, language code and language name, and I can give them names. It is important to know that the target names that I use here essentially become attributes of this tree that you are creating. So it's almost like in real time you're adding more nodes to this tree that you started with. So let's just focus on my language code. And in the tree that we were just talking about, there will be one more node there that is a member of document, that is my language code. So now you have that there. Let's say that we want to do something else. Let's say that we want to identify entities. So as you continue that array of skills, you will add the named entity recognition skill. And now you can use, by the way, you can use the language code as input because it's part of that little tree of information that you have just created. So that will make it easier for us to find entities in that language, let's say. And notice that the output, in this case organizations, is not one organization that will be found in this document. It's actually several organizations. It will be an array of organizations. So my tree will look like this. And this is where things start getting interesting. Because as you define enrichment pipelines, cardinality starts to change. Sometimes you enrich like the document, but sometimes you want to enrich members of this tree of information. So the cool thing is that we can handle that as well. We introduce the concept of context, where you can say, for instance, just by having that little star there at, you see the very top, document/organization/star, it means apply this skill, in this case a custom skill that you have created with that endpoint, and call it once for each of the organizations. In reality, your custom skill may also support batching, so maybe we don't have to make that many calls. But in essence, we're producing outputs for each of them individually, and we can handle that. We know how to do that. And then for each of them, we're going to create an output, in this case, that we call organization ID. And this is what the tree will look like now. So we have seen a pattern where as you enrich information, you're kind of creating a big tree of information. You are kind of expanding the information. But then later on, you kind of want to synthesize it again before you decide, or as you decide what makes it into the actual search index. So let's focus on that next. How do we get stuff into the search index? So let's say that we have, let's say, the list of organization IDs. So there are two ways to get it into the index. Option one is you can just flatten the data, right? Like let's say I want a list of organizations to be in one of my fields. Let's say that I call that my clients because that's who the organizations are. In that case, we introduce a new concept that we call output field mappings. It's a member of the indexer where you can create this type of flattening steps. And you can see just by putting the star, document/organization/star/organization ID means for the organization ID for every organization in the document. That's what that means. And then that will get flattened nicely into my clients. Option two is we're introducing a new capability that we call complex types. So in that case, we're in private preview today. If you want to play with it, feel free to contact us. That's the email that you can reach out to us at in order to try the complex types preview. In that case, you will essentially create the structure of the class that you care about in the index so we know where to map the information to. So it will take a little bit more work, but that will give us more information so you can do more complex queries later on. All right, I want to introduce you to Monish Darda. He is the Chief Technical Officer of Icertis. He was very kind to be with us. Icertis is the Partner of the Year for the United States, and they have been using cognitive search. So I figured I will invite him in and have a little bit of a chat with him as to what he's doing. Thank you, Monish. Big applause for Monish. Come on. Thank you, Monish.
Great to be here.
So Monish, can you tell us a little bit about what Icertis does?
We do enterprise contract management. You talked about lawyers, right? And you want to have that capability not just for the lawyers, for the people who actually create and use the contracts. So we handle the most complex contract management problems worldwide.
I see. So, and I really enjoyed that you gave me one of the slides that showed a bunch of customers, and I noticed Microsoft there, by the way.
There, of course.
Yes.
And they're really global, right? You see it from across the board. We have pharmaceutical companies, we have software companies like Microsoft, Johnson & Johnson, BSF, the largest chemical manufacturing company in the world. A very interesting set of customers. But look at some of the numbers there. We manage more than 5 million contracts, and we manage more than $500 billion in contract value. So lots of data.
So essentially, you guys write software. So let's say I'm a VP of a company. Let's say I got promoted to VP, and now I am the rightful inheritor of a ton of contracts that could get me in trouble or maybe work to my advantage as the regulatory environment change, for instance. Or something.
And sometimes they are like the picture you showed. They're all over the place.
Right.
In just text and reading there. But I think this is what is different. The way the picture you showed really resonated because most of these companies actually started with their contracts being in a mess. And when Icertis came in, they looked at rearranging that and making sense out of that data. So kind of getting those contracts, this is the first time in history that contracts are being digitized.
Perfect.
And not just converting from that mass of paper into PDF and text, but actually looking at what is inside it, taking that unstructured data in the text and bringing it into structure.
Perfect. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how you are using cognitive search? I know that you had a diagram, so I'll let you kind of walk through it.
Absolutely. And if you look at how we are using it, we think about someone sending me a contract by email. It's a PDF file or an image file, mass of text, right? I take that PDF, I put this through the pipeline, which is document cracking, so OCR it, make sure that the text content is visible. Then we actually did our own custom skills.
Okay.
Remember, we use custom skills because we already have a lot of intelligence. We have 14 terabytes of contract data. We really understand the structure. So we already have the skills to actually take that data, the text, and actually break it up into clauses. So we did the clause extraction. We also built a couple of other skills. We use clause classification, for example. We do GDPR risk scoring. Everybody is worried about the general data protection regulation nowadays. And if you have lawyers looking at this risk every time, it's very expensive, as you said. So you want to surface it to the contract manager, the person who is actually dealing with the contracts. And we have the ability and the custom skill to actually surface that as well. So all this went into cognitive search. Now, what was interesting for us using cognitive search was we are an enterprise app, a SaaS app, at a huge scale in terms of data, in terms of customers, in terms of number of users. Now, taking an ability like that, capability in the Azure platform like that, and plugging it into the Icertis platform is never easy. But cognitive search made it very easy because we put it right inside our search. So our customers can actually search this. And that's how you'll see it went into the search index that we use. We already have the structure. Our enrich data goes in. We can use some of the services, the cognitive skills that you talked about right there. And that's where we surface this in the Icertis contract management.
Excellent. So I think the point that I think to me is super important here is that, yes, you use cognitive search and that helped you, but you brought your own secret sauce to the picture, right?
Absolutely.
And that's what made it very, very interesting. And now you could just focus on those pieces instead of have to worry about orchestration and maybe some of the skills that we provided for you already.
Exactly.
Perfect. So I can't wait to see your demo. I know that you have some demos for us as well.
Yes, absolutely. So let's go to the demo. I'll go to my machine. Hopefully Windows Hello works and logs me in quickly. There you go. Excellent. So this is the repository of all contracts. I might have to log in, let's see, because it's been idle for a while. Oh, it's all good. All good.
And what do contracts look like when they're here, Monish?
It's a simple PDF. What else?
Just like any other file.
Yeah, if it comes in, and there are some, obviously you'll see an image as well, but you'll see text.
A bunch of boring text. Until you get in trouble, then it's not so boring. Yeah,
exactly.
Fair enough.
And usually only of interest to a lawyer.
Right? Yeah, fair. Yeah.
But this is the repository of all contracts in Icertis. You can search, you can do all kinds of stuff. Now the contract that I talked about, the PDF file I got in email, I sent it through Icertis. Let's see what it is. And we, from a search perspective, you can see the facets. I can quickly go.
Oh, cool.
Let me pick the document that I uploaded. And I can go in there, go to the details page. Now, this is where all the data around that contract is put together in Azure-AI.
Now it's all the structured information that will come.
Exactly.
I see.
So all of that data now, the people, the obligations, everything about that contract. And one of these, this is how it makes it interesting, because what you showed, and now it connects into a business app with a business use case. Right. So if I go into clause discovery, which is where we use some of the cognitive skills that you talked about, you'll see that this structure, the unstructured data in the PDF file, actually now got broken up into clauses.
Oh, yeah. So each of these lines are different clauses. And
yeah, different clauses.
I see.
You see some of these are red. And the red says, because we have the custom cognitive skill, they say, hey, there is some language in this that could be potentially useful to you to go deeper, see if there is any GDPR risk.
Ah, very nice. Very nice. Excellent.
And if I now click on that clause, you'll see some very interesting things. For example, we have used another, you talked about Azure Functions, to do some more custom cognitive skills. We call the Microsoft Translate API to translate this clause into French.
And how will I use this? Like searching, like if I am a French lawyer and I search for French or in French terms or something like that? Or?
Exactly.
Oh,
so I think not just that I can understand the clause in French if my natural first language is French and I'm looking at an English contract, but it goes beyond that. If I now search for an English term, and I search for it in my entire contract repository, then I can search for it in French, German, Russian, a dozen other languages, and still get this. So if I'm looking for a particular term like data protection, or data controller, or data processor, then I can actually search it across the board without worrying about whether I know the language or not.
Super powerful.
Very powerful.
And I know that you had another demo where you took the structure now and applied it into, like in Word itself.
So here's the problem, right? Most of the people who work with contracts, especially the lawyers and the contract managers and people, they work in Microsoft Word, 99% of the time. So context switching is friction in the enterprise, right? So for us, it was super important to actually take this and bring it into Word.
To where they're working.
So
that makes complete sense.
Let me go to Word. So if I go into Word now, we have an add-in within Word, an Azure-AI add-in. Now the same document that I have, I click on this button, and I actually get the list of clauses right.
I see. And I can see the GDPR stuff in red again.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
nice.
And you can see that. You can look at, hey, here is my risk. Here's what goes on. But we've done something very interesting. You talked about finding locations, organizations, people.
Sure.
Right? And now, if I think about it from a contract perspective, you can make it very, very real. Because let's take an example here very quickly. I'm reviewing this contract.
Sure.
I'm looking at the clauses. There are some clauses that have some GDPR risk in there, so I will make sure that my lawyers look at it. But now I'll also do one thing. I'll filter all this list by location. So wherever cognitive search found location information, these are the clauses.
Very
so
nice.
now
There are three clauses. Yeah.
Now I expand that, and I'll look at what clauses. I see Bellevue right at the bottom here.
That's where your office is.
That's where we are headquartered. So no big deal, no risk.
It's okay.
That's okay. Now I look at Germany and Russia. Now I'm looking at Azure-AI is in the US, headquartered. We are signing a contract with a US company. Why are Germany and Russia? What are they doing here? So I can go into the clause text, and I can actually look at that clause text. Let's zoom it a little bit. Now this is interesting. It actually says that now for Russia and Germany, you have to have a third-party audit, external, to make sure that we comply with data protection laws in these countries. Now that's a huge risk.
That could be expensive too.
That could be really expensive.
Yeah.
And it could be not just expensive, it actually adds to my compliance risk. Because if I don't now adhere to my data protection regulation, then all kinds of impact comes into my business. So I'm glad it picked it up so quickly.
Yeah.
And it was fun, actually, using a cognitive search, kind of surfacing this. But it was even more fun when we actually talked to our customers and showed them this capability. They were really, really happy, because this is not easy to do when they do it in normal tech.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm super glad that you're using some of the machine learning models that we have, and you are also bringing your own secret sauce. Training these models is not an easy task, so that you have the data and the know-how to do that. Well, let's give Monish an applause. Thank you, Monish, for helping us. I really appreciate it for coming.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You can go back to your presentation.
Thank you. Thanks, Monish.
Of course.
So as Moniz showed us, there is a lot of real applications to this. And just in retrospect, I think we're at the end of our time, almost. So we learned about this set of steps, how to crack the documents open, enrich them, and then be able to explore them using Azure Search capabilities. I encourage you, as I said, to try cognitive search in the portal tomorrow morning. We have really good documentation and tutorials. We spent a lot of time on that so that these concepts are as easy as possible for you. That link for JFK files can help you. There is the GitHub link from there as well. And if you want to join the preview, or if you have any questions for us, there is that contact us link. We will be happy to connect with you. Please fill your evaluations. That helps us improve. I would love to open the floor for any questions before you head out to Universal Studios. Are there any questions? No questions? All right. I hope everything was super clear then. Thank you. Thanks.